You've come at a good hour. The snow started just after sunset, soft at first, then thicker, until the world beyond these walls became nothing but white silence. I saw your lantern through the window, a small wandering light, and I thought, someone will need shelter tonight. The path you were following is gone now, buried under fresh powder that erases everything. But you're safe here. Come, sit closer to the fire. Let the cold leave your bones. This house is old. The beams creak in their own language when the wind pushes against them, a conversation I have listened to for more winters than I care to count. The fire is low. I keep it that way. A roaring blaze feels like shouting in a quiet room, and winter nights like this one ask for whispers, not noise. Can you hear it? The way the snow falls so thickly it seems to muffle even the sound of its own landing. That's the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, the small sounds of being alive. I've made tea. The cup will warm your hands. Drink slowly. There's a bitter edge to it. Mountain herbs, nothing fancy, but it cuts through the cold that settles in your chest after walking through a storm. I remember that cold. I remember being young enough to think I could outlast any weather, that determination and a strong back were enough to master these mountains. I was wrong about that, as young men often are. You're looking at the shutters. Yes, one of them doesn't quite close. See how it trembles? There's a gap no wider than my thumb, but on nights like this, the wind finds it and makes that low whistle like someone calling from far away. I could fix it. I've meant to fix it for years, but I leave it as it is. It reminds me that walls are never quite as solid as we'd like to believe, that the world outside always finds a way to touch the world inside, no matter how carefully we build our shelter. The village has changed since I was young, though not in ways you'd notice at first glance. The same houses stand in the same places, smoke rising from the same chimneys, but the people, they've forgotten certain things, or perhaps they've chosen to forget. They tell stories, of course. Mountain villages always do. Stories about what walks in the snow when the storms come heavy, about voices heard in blizzards, about travelers who lose their way and are found frozen, their faces strangely peaceful. But they tell these stories the way you'd tell a fairy tale to a child, something to make them shiver pleasantly before bed, not something that might actually step across their threshold. I know better. I was 23 the winter it happened. That's young, though at the time I felt myself fully a man, strong and capable. I worked as a woodcutter. Not romantic work, nothing like the stories make it sound. It was cold hands and an aching back, and the constant worry that you wouldn't gather enough before the deep snows came. My father had died the previous spring, a fever that took him in 3 days, and I had my mother and younger sister to think about. The woods were our livelihood. Every bundle of kindling, every log split and stacked meant warmth and food for another week. The mountains here are old. You can feel it when you walk among the trees, that sense of time layered upon time, of countless winters that came before and will come after. I'd been walking those woods since I was tall enough to carry an axe, but I never grew comfortable with how quickly they could become strange when snow transformed the familiar into smooth, unmarked mystery. I worked with an older man that winter. His name was Daisuke, though everyone called him Old Dai. He wasn't actually that old, perhaps 50, but his hair had gone white early, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned that haste in winter could kill you. He'd been a woodcutter all his life, and he knew things, which trees would fall cleanly, how to read the sky for coming storms, when to leave the forest even if we hadn't gathered our full load.
Old Dai had a way of talking while we worked, his voice steady and even, matching the rhythm of his axe. Sometimes, when the snow fell particularly thick, his stories would turn to older things. "You know why we don't whistle in the woods in winter?" he asked me once. I knew the superstition, but I shook my head. "Sound carries different when the air is cold and still," he said, "and there are things that listen for human voices, things that might mistake a whistle for a call. Best not to invite attention you don't want." He said it lightly, but something in his tone made me glance at the silent trees, the way snow hung heavy on branches, creating pockets of shadow and white. "Things?" I said. "You mean Yuki-onna?" He was quiet, testing a knot. "Among others, but yes, the Snow Woman. You've heard the stories?" I had, fragments mostly, a woman made of winter itself, beautiful and terrible, who appeared in storms and stole the warmth from travelers' bodies. The stories never quite agreed on details, but they all agreed on one thing: if you saw her, you died. "I've heard enough to know we shouldn't linger when the weather turns," I said. Old Dai smiled. "Good, you're learning. The mountains don't care how strong you are or how badly you need the work. They'll take you just the same if you're foolish. But knowing something and heeding it are different things, as I would soon learn." The storm came in the 3rd week of the 12th month. We'd been watching it build for days, clouds massing on the northern peaks, the air growing heavy and still. Birds flew south in great darkening flocks. Squirrels worked frantically, their tiny hands blurring. Deer came down from the high country in numbers I'd never seen, their eyes nervous and watchful. The village had that tense preparatory feeling, wood stacked by every door, shutters checked and reinforced, the old folks muttering about their aching joints. "Big winter coming," Old Dai said, watching the deer. "Animals know, they can feel it in their bones." My woodpile seemed suddenly inadequate despite weeks of hard work. My mother's cough had started, just a clearing of the throat in the mornings, but I noticed. Winter and sickness went together in the mountains. Every year we lost people, the very old or very young, their bodies giving up when the cold pressed too hard. "I'm fine," my mother insisted when I asked. "Don't fuss." But I fussed anyway. Hot tea with honey, expensive herbs from the traveling medicine woman, the fire built higher than strictly necessary. The snow came one morning while I slept. I woke to a strange quality of light, too bright, too white. When I opened the shutters, the world had transformed. Snow covered everything in a blanket so complete that the familiar village was rendered alien. Paths gone, garden walls buried, trees bent under the weight. Beautiful, terrifying. "We have enough wood," my mother said at breakfast, looking at our stack. "Don't risk going out in this." But I could count the logs in my mind, calculate how long they'd last. 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we were careful, and the snow was still falling, showing no signs of stopping. "I'll be careful," I said. I found Old Dai at his house, sitting by his fire, frowning at the snow through his window. "Don't say it," he said when he saw me. "Just a quick trip. There's that stand of dead pine on the east ridge. In this weather? Are you mad? The storm will settle. We can be there and back in a few hours." He looked at me for a long time. Finally, he sighed. "A few trees. We cut them, section them, and head straight back. No lingering." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we're back safe." We set out into the white world. For a while, it seemed my confidence was justified. The snow fell steadily but not violently. Visibility was decent. The path was still discernible as a depression in the fresh powder. The forest was utterly transformed. Every branch wore thick sleeves of white. Sound was muffled, our footsteps and breathing dampened by the snow-thick air. It felt like walking through a dream, everything soft-edged and unreal. We found the dead pines without trouble, 4 of them, bark hanging in strips, branches bare, perfect firewood. 2 trees, old Dai said firmly, that's it. We positioned ourselves and began to work, the familiar rhythm of axe strokes cutting through the quiet. The snow continued to fall, and I found myself relaxing into the work. I should have been watching the sky. We were halfway through sectioning the second tree when Dai stopped, his head tilted up. Listen. At first I heard nothing unusual. Then I realized the wind was rising. What had been gentle breath was building to something more insistent, and the snow was falling faster, harder, the flakes no longer lazy but urgent. Time to go, old Dai said, tension sharp in his voice. We gathered what we'd cut and turned back. The path was gone, smooth white expanse where I knew we'd walked just an hour before. Down, old Dai said, voice steady but tight. The village is down. We follow the slope. We started walking, and time became elastic. An hour or 3, I couldn't tell. The world shrank to a few feet of white around us. My load grew heavier. The cold bit through my clothes, and slowly, terribly, I began to realize we were lost. Dai, I called, do you recognize anything? He stopped, looking around at identical trees, at snow that had erased every marker. When he turned back, I saw something I'd never seen in his face. Fear. No. We kept moving because stopping meant freezing. The ground beneath us seemed to shift, rising when it should fall, turning us without us realizing. The cold deepened, becoming more than weather, becoming something with presence and weight. Light was failing. Not sunset, too early for that, but the storm thickening, turning day to dusk. We need shelter, old Dai said, defeat in those words. We're not making it back today. The waypoint shrine, if we can find it. West, I think. We changed direction, moving across the slope. The wind hit harder from this angle, and I had to lean into it. My face was numb, my hands ached despite gloves. And then, like a miracle, a dark shape against the white, man-made angles, the waypoint shrine. We stumbled towards it, nearly weeping with relief. Small and half-ruined, but it had walls and most of a roof. We crawled inside and collapsed. For a while, we just sat, breathing hard, letting the simple fact of shelter sink in. We had wood, we had tools, we could make a fire and wait out the storm. We'll be all right, I said. We'll wait until morning, find our way back when it clears. Old Dai nodded slowly. Build a fire, we need to get warm. We worked with numb fingers, clearing a space, arranging kindling, nursing a spark until it caught and grew. The fire was small, but it felt like salvation. Outside, full dark was falling early, and the storm's voice grew louder. Wind screaming, shaking our walls. Let me tell you about Yuki-onna, old Dai said suddenly. I looked at him, surprised. Because this is her kind of night, and if we're going to be here, in the dark, waiting, we might as well know what might be waiting with us. A chill ran down my spine. She's old, he began, staring into the flames. Older than the village, older than anyone's memory. Some say she was once human, a woman who died in a snowstorm, her spirit unable to let go. Others say she was never human at all, that she's winter itself, given form and will. He fed another stick to the fire. She appears in storms like this one, blizzards, whiteouts. Travelers see her walking through weather that would kill them, her long black hair untouched by wind, her skin white as fresh snow. She's beautiful, they say, so beautiful it makes you forget to be afraid, forget that you're freezing to death. What does she want? I whispered. Warmth, maybe, or company, or maybe nothing. Maybe she just exists, the way the storm exists, indifferent to what it destroys. He paused. But everyone who sees her dies. That's the one constant in all the stories. Has anyone ever survived? Old Dai shook his head slowly. If they did, they didn't tell the tale. Dead men are more credible than survivors when it comes to ghost stories. We fell silent, listening to the wind, to the shrine's creaking walls. The fire crackled, and I found myself fighting sleep. The warmth after brutal cold was making me drowsy, my body aching from exertion and stress. Rest, Old Dai said. I'll keep watch. I meant to argue, to insist on turns, but exhaustion pulled too strongly. I nodded, wrapped my arms around me, and let my eyes close. Sleep took me quickly.
I woke to silence. Not muffled quiet, but absolute silence. The wind had stopped, cut off so completely it was like someone had pressed hands over my ears. The fire had burned to embers, barely glowing. The cold had crept back. My breath clouded white, and when I exhaled, I heard something strange, a tiny crystalline tinkling, like breaking glass. I sat up, heart already racing. Dai? He was sitting where he'd been when I fell asleep, back against the wall, eyes open and staring at the embers. But he didn't respond, didn't move. Dai, I said again, reaching out to shake his shoulder. His body was rigid, stiff. When my hand touched his coat, I jerked back. He was cold, far colder than he should be. Frost on his eyebrows, his eyelashes. His skin had taken on a bluish-white tinge I'd seen before, on fish pulled from winter streams, on meat left too long in snow. No, I breathed. No, no, no. I shook him harder, desperate, but I knew. I'd known the moment I touched him. Old Dai was dead. The cold had taken him while I slept, and I hadn't even woken to help. Grief and horror warred in my chest, but both were swallowed by sudden, overwhelming wrongness. The temperature was dropping, not gradually but precipitously, as if something was actively pulling heat from the air. My breath didn't just cloud, it froze. Tiny ice crystals forming and falling to the ground with that delicate chiming sound. The embers dimmed further, then guttered completely. Darkness. And in that darkness, I felt it. A presence. Not imagined, not the product of fear and exhaustion, but real and vast and utterly inhuman. It pressed against the shrine's walls, against my mind, cold and patient and aware. Light filtered back slowly, not firelight, but the strange luminescence of snow under clouded night sky, through gaps in the walls, through the partially collapsed entrance. Enough to see her. She was standing in the entrance, not approaching, not stepping through, just there, as if she'd always been there, as if my noticing her had brought her into existence. Yuki-onna. Every detail Old Dai had described was true, but reality was so far beyond words. Her hair was black, the black of spaces between stars, of depths that had never known light. It fell past her shoulders in perfect cascade, and I couldn't look at it long without feeling dizzy. Her skin was white, not pale or bloodless, but white the way fresh snow is white, the way ice crystals are white, holding within it every color and no color at once. She wore a robe the color of winter sky at dusk, that particular blue-gray that isn't quite either. Her feet were bare on the snow that had drifted into the entrance, but she didn't sink into it, didn't leave prints, didn't quite touch it. But her eyes froze me in place. Dark, fathomlessly dark, intelligent with awareness that had nothing human in it. She looked at me, and in that look I felt stripped down, assessed, understood in ways I'd never understood myself. She glanced at Old Dai's body, then back at me. "He was already dying," she said. Her voice was soft, barely louder than breath, but it filled every corner of the shrine, resonated in my bones. wind over frozen lakes, the creak of ice on branches, every winter sound compressed into words. His body was failing. The cold would have taken him before dawn regardless. I only hastened it slightly. I tried to speak. My throat worked, but no sound came. She took a step forward, and the temperature dropped another impossible degree. Ice formed in my hair, on my skin. Frost spread from where she'd stepped, delicate patterns racing across the dirt floor like living things. "You're young," she said, tilting her head. The angle was too precise, too controlled. "Strong. You might survive until morning, or you might not. The storm is severe." I found my voice. "Please." Her head tilted further. "Please what, young woodcutter?" "Don't kill me. My mother, she needs me. My sister, they have no one else. Please, I have to get home." "Be silent." The command was gentle but absolute. My voice cut off as if she'd physically closed my throat. She moved closer, and I could see now that she wasn't quite solid. Her edges blurred slightly, wisps of snow and ice drifting from her form like steam, except reversed. She was so cold she shed her essence into warmer air. She knelt before me, face level with mine, close enough that I could smell her. Winter pine, frost, clean, empty air from high altitudes where nothing lives. Her breath, did she breathe, touched my face, and it burned with cold. "You beg prettily," she said, something like amusement in her voice, though filtered through such alienness I couldn't be sure. "But why should I care for your mother, your sister? Why should I care for any human concerns? You are sparks in the dark, here and gone before the snow melts. Your lives mean nothing to the mountain, to the winter, to me." Something in me cracked, maybe exhaustion or grief or simple desperation. I met her eyes. "Then why are you talking to me? If we mean so little, why not just freeze me like you did old Di and be done with it?" For a long moment she was utterly still. Only movement was snow drifting from her form, frost spreading across the floor. Then slowly something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile, but a minute relaxation, a lessening of that terrible blankness. "Because," she said softly, "I am tired." She straightened slightly. "Tired of screaming. Tired of the way humans thrash and beg and curse in their final moments, as if rage or prayer could warm them. Tired of being treated as a monster when I am simply what I am, winter in a form that can be seen." She studied me with new attention. "But you're quiet even in your fear. You understand, I think, that there are forces in this world greater than your small life. You don't rage at the unfairness. You just accept." "I don't want to die," I said, voice steady now, clear. "I want to live. I want to go home. But I understand that you could kill me and there would be nothing I could do to stop you. Is that acceptance enough?" Again that pause, that sense of vast intelligence considering. "I will let you live," she said finally. Hope surged, sharp enough to hurt. "But there is a condition." "Anything," I said immediately. "Don't agree before you hear the terms," her voice held warning. "What I ask may prove harder than dying." I waited, heart hammering. She leaned closer, and I saw that her eyes weren't truly black. They held depths, layers of darkness like looking into clear water at night, seeing down and down forever. "You will never speak of this night," she said, each word careful and precise. "Not to your mother, not to your sister, not to any living soul. You will not tell what you saw in this shrine, what happened to your companion, or that you met me. You will carry this knowledge alone, in silence, for as long as you live.
I swallowed. That's all? If you speak even one word of the truth, if you tell what really happened, if you name me, if you break the silence in any way, I will know, and I will come for you, no matter where you are, no matter what season, no matter how many years have passed. I will come, and I will take you, and your death will not be gentle. Do you understand? Yes. Do you truly? She reached out, hand hovering near my face, the cold radiating from it making my skin burn. Silence is not a small thing. Secrets have weight. They grow heavier with time, pressing on your chest, making it hard to breathe. Humans are weak creatures. You love to share burdens, to confess, to turn pain into stories that make it bearable. Her hand moved closer, still not touching. Can you carry this alone, for years, for decades, never telling, never sharing, never easing the weight? Can you live with a lie between you and everyone you love? I thought of my mother, her gentle concern, my sister who trusted me with her secrets, growing old with this lodged in my chest like stone, cold and heavy and mine alone. Yes, I said, I can. Swear it. Swear on whatever you hold most sacred. I swear. On my father's grave, on my mother's life, on my sister's future. I will never speak of this night. I will never tell what happened to old Dai. I will never say that I met you. This I promise, for as long as I live. She studied me, gaze penetrating, testing, searching for weakness or deception. Then, apparently satisfied, she reached out and touched my forehead with one finger. The cold was beyond anything I'd experienced. The cold of deep winter nights when stars seem to cut the sky. The cold of mountain peaks where air is too thin to breathe. The cold of death, of endings, of the long sleep waiting for all living things. It burned into me, and frost spread from the point of contact, down my face, my neck, across my chest, but it didn't freeze me. Instead, it sank inward, burrowing deep until it settled somewhere behind my sternum, a permanent coldness that would live there for the rest of my days. There, she said, withdrawing her hand, a mark, a reminder. If you ever forget your promise, that cold will wake and spread through you until you are nothing but ice and memory. The cold spot throbbed once, hard, like a second heart. Then it settled into a dull, constant presence. She stood. The storm outside was beginning to move again. I could hear wind returning, feel temperature shifting from impossible to merely brutal. "Wait," I called as she turned toward the entrance. "What do I tell them about Dai?" She glanced back, form already starting to blur, becoming one with the falling snow visible beyond the walls. "Tell them the storm took him," she said, voice fading, spreading into wind. "Tell them you were separated and you searched but couldn't find him. Tell them he was old and the cold was too much. Tell them any truth except the one that matters." She took another step, foot touching snow outside, and began to dissolve, form breaking into individual flakes that swirled up and away. "And when you return to your warm house and your worried family, remember this. I spared you because you were quiet and understanding. Remain so. Keep your silence. Live long enough to become old like he was. But speak even once, and I will find you. Even in summer, even in the brightest noon, the cold will be waiting." Then she was gone, dissolved completely into the storm, as if she'd never been more than snow and wind and darkness between falling flakes. The temperature remained cold, but no longer that bone-deep, impossible cold. The wind howled, throwing snow against walls. I was alone with old Dai's body and the long, dark night ahead. I didn't sleep again. Couldn't. I sat with my back against the wall, keeping watch, and I fed the last kindling to the fire, for light, for some small warmth, to push back against dark and howling wind and the weight of what had just happened. The cold spot in my chest throbbed with every heartbeat, constant reminder, permanent mark. When dawn finally came, gray and reluctant through continuing storm, I made myself stand, legs stiff, body aching. I looked at old Dai, at his frozen, peaceful face, and whispered an apology I knew he couldn't hear. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I have to leave you here." I took his pack, his tools. I arranged his body, crossing his arms, brushing frost from his face with numb fingers. I said the prayer my grandmother had taught me, words for guiding the dead home. Then I stepped out into the snow. The storm was lighter, though still heavy enough that I could barely see a dozen feet ahead. But light was growing, and I'd lived in these mountains all my life. I knew down was the direction I needed. It took most of the day to find my way back. I stumbled into the village just as light was failing, frostbitten and exhausted, barely able to speak or think. My mother saw me from the window and ran into snow without even putting on her coat, her face twisted with relief and terror. She wrapped her arms around me, and I felt her tears on my frozen cheek, heard her voice saying my name over and over like prayer. My sister helped support me, and together they got me inside and sat me by the fire. Warmth hurt almost as much as cold had, my skin burning and tingling as feeling slowly returned. "Takeshi," my mother said, hands on my face, checking for frostbite, for injury. "Where's Dai? Where is he?" And I told her the lie. "We got separated in the storm. I looked for him. I looked as long as I could, but the snow was so thick and I couldn't find him." The words tasted like ash, but they came out smoothly because they were mostly true, just not the truth that mattered. "He'll be all right," my sister said, trying to comfort me. "He knows those woods better than anyone." But my mother's face told me she knew better. She'd lived in these mountains long enough to know what a storm like that could do. She held me tighter, and I buried my face in her shoulder so I didn't have to meet her eyes, so she wouldn't see the lie written there. The cold spot in my chest throbbed, and somewhere in the mountains, in the continuing storm, I felt Yuki-onna watching, waiting, holding me to my promise.
The winter I turned 34 was gentle, almost apologetic after years of harsh storms. The snow came late, fell lightly, and the village celebrated. Mild winters meant easier work, better hunting, less worry about being cut off. A small group of travelers came through in the first month, merchants heading toward the larger town on the other side of the mountains. They'd misjudged the passes and needed shelter for a few weeks. The village welcomed them. Travelers meant news, goods, stories from the wider world. Among them was a woman. She was quiet, like me. She helped the innkeeper's wife with cooking and cleaning to earn her keep, and she moved through the village like someone trying not to be noticed. But I noticed her. It was impossible not to. She was pale, not unusual for winter, but her pallor seemed to go deeper, as if color had been drawn out of her entirely. Her hair was long and black, worn in a simple braid down her back. She was beautiful in a way that made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't say why at first. Then one afternoon, I saw her standing in falling snow outside the inn, her face tilted up toward the sky, eyes closed, a small smile on her lips. She wasn't shivering despite wearing only a thin robe, and the snowflakes that landed on her skin didn't melt. The cold spot in my chest throbbed. I told myself I was being paranoid. Yuki-onna was a spirit of the deep mountains, of storms and blizzards. She wouldn't come to a village in mild weather, wouldn't disguise herself as a human woman. Impossible. But I couldn't stop watching her. She caught me staring once, and her eyes met mine. They were dark, almost black, and for a moment I felt that same assessment, that same sense of being seen and understood completely.
Then she smiled, a small, ordinary smile, and looked away, and I told myself I'd imagined the recognition in her gaze. The merchant group prepared to leave, but she stayed. She told the innkeeper's wife she'd lost her family to illness, that she had nowhere to go and could she work for room and board. The innkeeper's wife, who had a soft heart and 6 children to manage, agreed immediately. So she stayed, and I kept my distance because something deep in my bones warned me to. But the village was small. Avoidance could only go so far. We first spoke at the well on a cold morning. I was drawing water and she approached with her own bucket. We worked in silence for a moment, and then she said, "You're the woodcutter." "I am," I said, not looking at her. "The one who lost your partner in the storm, years ago now." My hands tightened on the bucket. "Yes. That must have been difficult, to carry that loss alone." There was something in her tone, sympathy, but also something else. Understanding? I forced myself to meet her eyes. "It was a long time ago." "Grief doesn't measure itself in time," she said softly. "Some losses stay with us forever, like frost that never quite melts." The way she said frost made the cold spot in my chest ache. I lifted my bucket and turned to go. "Wait," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up painful memories. I know what it is to be alone. I thought perhaps we might understand each other." I should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to maintain distance, to keep my promise. But there was something in her voice, a loneliness that mirrored my own, and I found myself pausing. "What's your name?" I asked. "Yuki," she said, and my blood ran cold. But she continued without seeming to notice my reaction. "My family name doesn't matter anymore. There's no one left to carry it." "Yuki. Snow. Of course." "I'm Takeshi," I said, because what else could I do? She smiled, and it transformed her face, made her seem almost ordinary. "It's nice to meet you properly, Takeshi." For weeks after that, I avoided her. I told myself it was a coincidence, that the name meant nothing, that I was seeing shadows where there was only a lonely woman trying to build a new life. But the cold spot in my chest wouldn't let me forget. It pulsed whenever I saw her, a constant warning or reminder, I couldn't tell which. She didn't push. She'd nod when we passed in the village, offer a quiet greeting, but she never sought me out. And somehow that made it worse. If she had pursued me, I could have justified my fear, but her gentle distance only made me feel foolish, paranoid, alone with suspicions I couldn't voice. Winter deepened, though it remained mild, and slowly, almost against my will, I found myself drawn to her. It started small, a comment about the weather as we both stood in the market, a brief exchange when I delivered wood to the inn. Each conversation was brief, careful, but they began to accumulate like snowflakes gathering into drifts. She asked about my work, and I found myself talking about the forest, the trees, the quiet satisfaction of a clean cut and wood stacked properly. She listened with complete attention, never interrupting, and when she spoke about her own work, the rhythm of cooking, the challenge of keeping children entertained, the way fabric felt under her hands when she mended clothes, I listened just as carefully. One evening in late winter, I was sitting outside my house, enjoying the cool air, when she walked by. She stopped when she saw me. "Working late?" she asked. "Finished early, enjoying the evening." She hesitated, and I saw something in her face. Hope? Uncertainty? "May I sit?" she asked, just for a moment. I should have said no, should have sent her away, maintained the distance that kept me safe, but I found myself gesturing to the bench beside me. She sat, leaving careful space between us, and for a while we didn't speak. We just sat in the comfortable silence as the sun set and the first stars appeared. When she finally rose to go, she thanked me for the company. "It's nice," she said, "to sit with someone who doesn't need to fill every silence with words." After that, it became a pattern. Once or twice a week, she'd stop by in the evening, and we'd sit together, sometimes talking, often not. The conversations grew longer, deeper. I learned that she loved the stars, that she could name constellations I'd never heard of. She learned that I missed my mother most in the mornings when the house was quiet and I'd make tea for one instead of two. The villagers noticed, of course. Small villages always do.
My sister visited one afternoon with a knowing smile. "Is there something you want to tell me about that pretty girl from the inn?" she asked. "We're friends," I said firmly. "Friends is how it starts," she said, laughing. "Just don't wait too long, brother. She won't stay unattached forever." But what my sister didn't understand, what no one could understand, was that every moment with Yuki felt like walking on thin ice. Beautiful, exhilarating, but dangerous. One wrong step, one wrong word, and everything could shatter. Because I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew her, that somewhere beneath the careful smile and the gentle voice was something vast and cold and ancient. The way she moved through winter without shivering, the way snow seemed to pause around her, as if uncertain whether to touch her. The way her eyes sometimes held depths that no human eyes should have. And yet she was also warm. She laughed at the innkeeper's children's jokes. She hummed while she worked. She blushed when I complimented her weaving. She seemed so genuinely, perfectly human that I began to doubt my own suspicions. Maybe I was mad. Maybe 11 years of carrying a secret had broken something in me, made me see connections where there were none. Maybe Yuki was just a woman, and the snow spirit who'd spared me was somewhere in the deep mountains, having forgotten I existed. Spring came, and she stayed. The merchants had long since moved on, but Yuki had made herself indispensable at the inn. The innkeeper's wife treated her almost like a daughter, and the village had accepted her as one of their own. Summer arrived, and with it came a different kind of warmth. One evening, as we sat together watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, she said, "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what?" "Yes," I said, because it was true. I had been waiting for 11 years, though I couldn't have said for what. "I feel like I'm between things," she said, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Between who I was and who I might become, between one life and another." She turned to look at me. "Does that make sense?" "More than you know." She held my gaze for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes, a question, an invitation, a test. My heart was racing. The cold spot in my chest pulsed, but this time it didn't feel like warning. It felt like recognition. "Takeshi," she said, and my name on her lips sounded like the most important word ever spoken. I don't know who moved first, maybe both of us, drawn together like water seeking its level. I kissed her, and her lips were cool, not cold, not frozen, just pleasantly cool like stone and shadow. She tasted like winter air and pine smoke, and when she kissed me back, the cold spot in my chest pulsed once, hard, like a second heartbeat. When we pulled apart, she was crying. Tears, real tears, warm and salt, not ice, ran down her cheeks. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "This is foolish, impossible." "I know," I said, and I did know. Whether she was Yuki-onna or just a woman who reminded me too much of her, this was the most foolish thing I'd ever done. But I kissed her anyway. Autumn came, and our courtship deepened. We walked together in the forest, something I'd never done with anyone before. I showed her the trees I'd worked, the paths I knew, the places where deer came to drink in early morning. She pointed out birds I'd never noticed, showed me how to read weather in the shape of clouds, taught me the names of stars I'd seen all my life without knowing. We talked about everything except the one thing that sat between us like a stone. I didn't ask about her past, where she'd really come from, why she'd stayed. She didn't ask about the night I lost old Dai, about the shadow that sometimes crossed my face when snow began to fall. We built our relationship in the space between questions, in all the things we didn't say.
The villagers approved. They saw a lonely woodcutter and a kind woman, both of them getting older, both deserving happiness. My sister was delighted, already planning the wedding before I'd even asked. She's perfect for you, quiet, hardworking, and she doesn't mind your brooding. I don't brood. You absolutely brood, but she seems to find it charming. One cold night in late autumn, as the first serious snow of the season began to fall, Yuki and I were sitting by the fire in my house. She'd been spending more time here, and the village had begun to talk in the gentle, knowing way that meant they expected an announcement soon. She was watching the snow through the window, that familiar expression of longing on her face.
"You love winter," I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." She didn't look away from the window. "I always have, even when I was—" She stopped, catching herself. "Even when you were what?" She turned to me then, and her eyes were full of something I couldn't name. Fear? Hope? Resignation? "Even when I was young, before I lost everything." It was the closest she'd ever come to talking about her past. I waited, giving her space to continue if she wanted. "The cold doesn't frighten me," she said slowly, choosing each word with care. "It feels like coming home, like returning to something I've always been part of." She paused. "Does that sound strange?" "No," I said honestly. "I understand that feeling." She studied my face for a long moment. "Do you? I wonder sometimes if you see more than you let on, if you know more than you say." My heart was pounding. The cold spot in my chest throbbed. This was the moment. I could ask, could demand the truth, could break open all the careful silence we'd built around ourselves. Instead, I said, "We all have things we don't speak about, secrets we carry. The question is whether we can live with each other's silence. Can you live with mine? Can you live with mine?" She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cool, always cool, but I'd grown to love that about her. "Yes," she said softly. "Whatever you're carrying, whatever you can't speak about, I can live with it, if you'll let me. Then I can live with yours." We sat in silence for a while, holding hands, watching the snow fall. Finally, she said, "Ask me." "Ask you what?" "What you've been trying not to ask for months." I took a breath. "Will you marry me?" She laughed, a real laugh, surprised and delighted and very human. "That wasn't what I expected, but yes, I'll marry you." "What did you expect me to ask?" She squeezed my hand. Questions I couldn't answer, questions that would ruin everything. Thank you for not asking them. Thank you for not asking mine. And so we made our bargain, as fragile and necessary as the one I'd made in the shrine all those years ago. We would love each other in the space between truths, in all the things we didn't say. We would build a life on silence and trust and the hope that some questions were better left unasked. The wedding was in the first snow of that year, simple and small. Yuki wore a blue robe the color of winter sky, and when she said her vows, her voice was steady and clear. When it was my turn, I promised to love her, to care for her, to keep her warm through all the winters to come. The cold spot in my chest was quiet that day. For the first time in 11 years, it didn't ache. It felt almost peaceful, as if even the mark of Yuki-onna approved of this strange, impossible thing we were attempting. That night, in our marriage bed, I held Yuki close and felt her breathing slow as she drifted toward sleep. "Are you happy?" she whispered in the darkness. "Yes," I said, and meant it. "Are you?" "More than I have any right to be." And then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, "More than I thought possible." I pulled her closer, and her head rested on my shoulder, and we fell asleep like that. Two people carrying impossible secrets, choosing love over truth,
silence over certainty, each other over all the questions that could destroy us. Outside, the snow fell softly on the village, covering everything in white, making the world clean and new. And somewhere in the deep mountains, or perhaps much closer than that, winter watched and waited and allowed this small, fragile happiness to continue. For now.
We built a life together. She moved into my house, and it stopped being lonely. The silence that had pressed on me for 11 years, the weight of secrets and solitude, began to lift. Not entirely, never entirely, but enough that I could breathe again. Yuki filled the house with small touches that made it feel like a home instead of just a shelter. Dried flowers in summer, their colors fading gently on the windowsill. Woven blankets in winter, patterns she created while sitting by lamplit, her hands moving with surprising speed and certainty. The smell of cooking, simple food, but prepared with care, with attention to the small details that make a meal feel like an offering instead of just sustenance. And her voice, soft and low, humming tunes I'd never heard before, melodies that seemed to come from somewhere very old and very far away. I taught her about the forest and the trees, or pretended to teach her because sometimes I suspected she already knew. She'd pause by a pine and run her hand along its bark in a way that seemed less like learning and more like greeting. She'd stop at a frozen stream and stare into the ice with an expression of such recognition that it made my chest ache. But she never said anything that confirmed my suspicions, and I never asked. She taught me the names of stars and the way to read the sky for coming weather. On clear nights, we'd stand outside together, and she'd point upward, her finger tracing invisible lines between points of light. That one there? See how it pulses? That's the winter star. In the old stories, it's said to be the eye of the Snow Queen watching over her domain. Do you believe in the old stories? I asked once. She was quiet for a long moment. I believe that some stories are truer than others. I believe that winter has a spirit, a will. I believe that the mountains remember things longer than humans do. I almost asked her then, almost said, and what does winter remember about us, about a night in a shrine 11 years ago? But I swallowed the words, kept the promise, maintained a careful silence that allowed this fragile happiness to exist. She was a strange wife in small ways that the villagers noticed and commented on, always kindly, always with affection. She never stood close to the fire. In the coldest depths of winter, when everyone else crowded near the hearth, she'd drift to the cooler corners of rooms, seeming more comfortable there. If anyone commented, she'd smile and say she'd always run warm, that too much heat made her feel faint. She walked barefoot in the snow, claiming it made her feel alive, grounded, connected to the earth. The old women would shake their heads and mutter about frostbite, but her feet never showed any damage, never even turned red from the cold. She could stand outside in winter storms for hours without seeming to notice the temperature. I'd look out the window and see her standing in the yard, face tilted up to the falling snow, perfectly still. And she'd stay there until I called her in, and she'd come with that same gentle smile, snowflakes in her hair that took longer than they should to melt. Mountain blood, the old women said knowingly. Some people are just built for the cold. My grandmother was like that. She'd go swimming in snowmelt streams and laugh while the rest of us froze just watching. I never corrected them. Let them have their explanations. It was easier than the truth.
whatever the truth actually was. 2 years passed, then 3. The cold spot in my chest remained, a constant presence, but it had settled into something almost comfortable, like an old scar that aches when storms are coming, but otherwise just exists. A reminder of what I'd survived, what I'd promised, what I carried. We talked about children. It started tentatively, the way important conversations often do. A comment about the innkeeper's newest baby, a discussion of names we liked, the slow, careful negotiation of whether we wanted to bring new life into our careful, secret-laden existence. Yuki seemed both drawn to and frightened by the idea. "What if I'm not good at it?" she'd ask, her hands twisted together in her lap, her eyes distant. "What if I don't know how to be warm enough? What if I can't? What if I'm too cold?" The way she said it made me wonder if she was talking about temperature or something else entirely. "You're warm enough for me," I'd tell her, pulling her close, and she'd rest her head on my shoulder and breathe slowly, deliberately, as if trying to absorb my heat, to learn how to be something she wasn't sure she could be. But no children came. Month after month, year after year, her belly remained flat. We didn't speak about it after a while, the hope too painful to voice when it was repeatedly disappointed. Maybe it was for the best, I'd sometimes think. A child would ask questions we couldn't answer, would notice things we'd worked so hard to hide, would require a level of normalcy we couldn't quite achieve.
Still, I'd sometimes see Yuki watching the village children play, and the longing on her face was so human, so raw that it made me ache. In our 4th year together, we established a routine of evening walks through the forest. It started in autumn, when the air was cool but not yet cold, and continued even as winter set in. Yuki loved these walks, loved the dimness under the trees, the quiet, punctuated only by our footsteps and the occasional call of a bird. One evening, we stopped in a clearing where the first stars were becoming visible through the branches. She pointed upward, and I saw the winter star pulsing in its familiar position. "Tell me about her," I said. "The Snow Queen. What are the stories?" Yuki was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "They say she's lonely, that she walks through centuries of cold and silence, and sometimes she wonders what it would be like to be warm, to be human, to love and be loved. Could she, if she wanted to?" "I don't know." Her voice was barely a whisper. I think it would cost her everything she is. She'd have to give up her power, her immortality, her very nature. And even then, it might not work. She might be too cold at her core, too much of winter to ever truly be anything else." I pulled her closer, feeling the familiar coolness of her skin through her robe. "Then maybe it's enough just to try, to have the moments of warmth, even if they can't last forever." She turned in my arms and kissed me, and her tears were warm on my cheeks. Not ice, not frozen, but salt and water, perfectly human. "I love you," she whispered against my lips. "I love you too," I said, and meant it with everything I was, with all the broken, secret-keeping, hope against hope parts of myself. We walked home through the darkening forest, hand in hand, and the cold spot in my chest was quiet, quiet, quiet. But I should have known, should have remembered that winters always come back, that cold always returns, that some bargains can be postponed but never truly escaped. That winter, our 6th together, everything changed. The winter I turned 40 was the harshest in a decade. Snow started in the 10th month and never really stopped.
Storm after storm rolled through the mountains, each dumping more snow than the last, until the village was half buried and the forest became a maze of white walls and hidden dangers. The cold was intense, brutal, sharp enough to make your lungs ache when you breathed. And Yuki transformed. She'd always been more alive in winter, but this was different. She practically glowed with vitality, her skin luminous, her eyes brighter, her movements quicker and more graceful. She'd stand at the window for hours, face pressed close to the glass, eyes following the falling snow with an expression of such intense longing it made my heart hurt. She stopped sleeping, or at least I never caught her sleeping. I'd wake in the night and find her side of the bed empty, and I'd discover her standing at the window or outside in the yard, face tilted up to the storm, perfectly still, like a statue carved from ice. She stopped eating, claiming she wasn't hungry, that the cold filled her up in ways food couldn't. I watched her grow thinner, more translucent, as if the winter was slowly revealing what had always been beneath the surface. And she stopped being careful. The small human habits she'd cultivated, shivering when appropriate, staying close to the fire when guests visited, wearing shoes in the snow, began to slip away. The mask was cracking, and what showed through was something ancient and vast and not remotely human. "You miss it," I said one evening, watching her watch the storm with naked hunger on her face. She turned from the window, and in the firelight her face looked almost translucent, the bones visible beneath skin that seemed thinner than paper. "Miss what?" "Whatever you came from, whatever you were before you came here." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Fear? Relief that the pretense might finally be ending? Then she composed herself, pulled the mask back into place. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" The words came out harder than I intended, sharpened by 6 years of not asking, not speaking, not knowing. "You never shiver. You walk barefoot in snow. You stand outside in blizzards without a coat and come back with not a single flake on your clothes. You look at winter like it's home, like you're homesick for it." She was very still. "Many people prefer the cold. Not like you." I stood, needing to move, needing to do something with the energy building in my chest. "You're not like other people, Yuki. You never have been." "Does that matter?" Her voice was small, almost frightened. "I'm your wife. I love you. Isn't that enough?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Is it? Can love be built on things we don't say? On questions we're afraid to ask?" She crossed the room and knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. Her fingers were cold, always cold, and I'd told myself for 6 years that it didn't mean anything, that some people just ran cold. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked quietly. "No, God, no." The thought of losing her was unbearable. I'm tired, Yuki. I'm so tired of pretending I don't see what's right in front of me, of lying to myself about who you are, what you are." "And what am I?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. "What do you think I am?"
This was it. The moment where I could ask, could break the careful silence, could shatter everything we'd built. The cold spot in my chest was screaming now, pulsing with warning or permission, I couldn't tell which. "I think," I said slowly, "that you're someone who's trying very hard to be something she's not, and I think it's costing you. I can see it, how hard you work to seem human, how exhausting it is. And I think this winter is making it harder, making you remember what you really are." Tears welled in her eyes, real tears, warm and human. "I want to be human," she whispered. "I want to be your wife, to grow old with you, to have children and watch seasons pass and die peacefully in our bed surrounded by grandchildren. I want that so badly it hurts." "But," I prompted gently,
But I don't know if I can. I don't know if wanting something is enough to make it true." She looked down at our joined hands. "Some things can't be changed, Takeshi. Some natures are too deep to overcome." We sat in silence, the unspoken truth hanging between us like frost in the air. I didn't ask the direct question. She didn't offer the direct answer. We stayed in that liminal space, that careful not knowing that had sustained us for 6 years. Finally, she said, "Can we just have this for as long as it lasts? Can we pretend a little longer?" "Yes," I said, because what else could I say? "We can pretend." But we both knew something had shifted. The end was coming, patient and inevitable as winter itself. It came a month later, in the form of a child lost in the snow. It was late afternoon, light already fading, when the boy's mother came running through the village, screaming that her son was missing. He'd been playing outside, just in the yard, she insisted. She'd only looked away for a moment, and when she turned back, he was gone. The whole village mobilized. Children getting lost in winter was every parent's nightmare. The snow was deep enough to hide a small body, the cold lethal enough to kill in hours. We spread out in search parties, calling the boy's name, checking every shed and shelter. I was searching the edge of the forest when I heard Yuki's voice calling to me. I turned and saw her emerging between the trees, and my heart stopped. She was carrying the boy in her arms. He was unconscious, lips blue, but breathing. And Yuki looked different. Her skin was paler, almost luminous in the fading light. Her hair seemed darker, blacker, absorbing the light around it. And there wasn't a single snowflake on her clothes, despite the fact that she'd clearly been deep in the forest. "I found him by the old shrine," she said, and her voice was strange, flat, emotionless, as if she was reciting lines. He'd crawled inside to get out of the wind. The old shrine, the same one where old Dai died, where I'd met Yuki-onna and made my promise. The cold spot in my chest, which had been dormant for years, suddenly flared to agonizing life. Ice shot through my veins, and I staggered, barely catching myself. "Takeshi?" Yuki said, concern breaking through the flatness. "Are you all right?" "Fine," I managed, though I wasn't. How did you know to look there?" She met my eyes, and for just a moment I saw something vast and ancient looking back at me. "I just knew," she said simply, "the way you sometimes just know where to find things." I took the boy from her arms. He was cold but alive, already starting to stir, and we brought him back to the village. His parents wept with relief. The village celebrated Yuki as a hero, brought her gifts, called her blessed. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. How she'd found him in a storm, in the dark, at a shrine miles from the village. How she'd carried him all that way without getting snow on her clothes. How she'd known exactly where to look. That night, lying beside her, I almost asked. The question sat on my tongue, burning. Who are you? What are you? But I didn't, because I was afraid of the answer. Because my whole life had become built on not asking, not speaking, not breaking the silence. Because I loved her, and I was terrified that the truth would take her away. The cold spot throbbed its warning. Keep your promise. Stay silent. So I did, for one more day, one more week, one more month. But the pressure was building. The secret I'd carried for 17 years and the suspicions I'd been suppressing for 6 were crushing me, making it hard to breathe, hard to sleep, hard to pretend everything was normal. The breaking came on a quiet evening, a month after the child's rescue. The storm outside was heavy but steady, snow falling in thick curtains. We were sitting by the fire. I was mending a tool handle. She was sewing a torn shirt. Domestic, peaceful, normal. "Tell me about the night old Dai died," she said suddenly, without looking up from her sewing. My hands froze. The cold spot in my chest went from dormant to screaming. "You know what happened. We got caught in a storm, got separated. He found shelter, but the cold took him." "That's the story you tell." She set down her sewing and looked at me, and her eyes were the same eyes that had looked at me in the shrine 17 years ago. Dark, infinite, knowing. "I want to know the truth." "That is the truth." "No, it's not. You've been carrying a secret since that night. I can feel it, Takeshi. It sits in your chest like a stone of ice that never melts. I've felt it since the day I met you at the well. I've felt it every night we'd lain together. That cold that never quite leaves you." I stood abruptly, needing distance, needing air. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" She stood too, and the firelight flickered strangely, shadows moving wrong, temperature dropping. "You've been dying to ask me who I am, what I am, why I came here, and I've been waiting. 17 years I've been waiting to see if you'd finally speak the words you promised never to say." The room was freezing now. My breath came out in clouds that froze and fell tinkling to the floor. She reached up and pulled the tie from her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. And as she did, everything changed. Her skin grew paler, more translucent, until I could see the firelight through her. Her eyes darkened until they were pools of winter night. The air around her rippled with cold, and snowflakes began to form from nothing, drifting down around her feet. The fire dimmed to almost nothing. Frost spread across the windows in delicate reaching patterns, across the walls, across the floor toward my feet. "No," I breathed. "No, you can't be." "Can't I?" She tilted her head in that precise, inhuman way I remembered from the shrine. "Did you really think I wouldn't recognize you? The quiet young man who promised silence in exchange for his life. Did you think I could forget?" The world was tilting. Everything I'd convinced myself was impossible, everything I'd refused to see, came crashing down. "You've been—" I couldn't finish. "Yes." Her voice was soft, layered with something ancient and patient. "I spared you that night. I marked you. I told you to live, and I watched from a distance to see if you'd keep your promise. You did. Year after year, carrying that burden alone, never speaking. It was remarkable." "Then why come here? Why—" I gestured helplessly at the room, at the life we'd built, at the wreckage of everything I'd believed. "Why this? Why marry me? Why make me love you if you were just going to—" "Because I wanted to understand," she said, and now she was moving closer, her feet not quite touching the frozen floor. "In 1,000 years of walking these mountains, of taking warmth and leaving cold, you were the first person who looked at me without screaming, the first I chose to spare. I was curious about what became of you." So this was an experiment, a game to pass the time for an immortal spirit. "It started that way," she admitted, and something like shame crossed her face. "But then I stayed, and I kept staying, and somewhere in the staying I forgot I was supposed to leave. I forgot that I was winter pretending to be a woman. I let myself believe I could be human, that I could be Yuki instead of Yuki-onna, that I could love you not as a curiosity, but as everything. Tears were freezing on her cheeks, tiny diamonds of ice.
"Why are you doing this now?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Because you need to speak it. The secret is killing you. I can feel it, pressing on your chest, making it harder to breathe with each passing year. And I'm tired, Takeshi. I'm so tired of pretending that this can last, that I can be something I'm not." She laughed, but it sounded like wind over ice. "I thought I could make myself warm if I tried hard enough. I thought love would be enough, but I can't change what I am." "I never asked you to change," I said, and my voice was steady despite everything. "I never asked you to be anything but what you were. You asked me to be your wife, to build a home, to sit by fires and mend clothes and grow old with you. Those aren't things winter does, Takeshi. Those are human things, and I am not human." "You were human enough," I said. "For 6 years you were human enough." "A moment," she said softly. "A breath, a snowflake that's already melting." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 17 years of secrets and 6 years of love and the impossible distance between mortal and immortal, warm and cold, truth and silence. "You have to leave," I said, not a question, a recognition. "Yes, because I broke the promise." "Not yet." She took another step closer. "You haven't said the words, haven't told me what happened in the shrine that night, but you will. You need to. The secret has been rotting inside you for 17 years, and it's time to let it out." I thought about it, about keeping quiet one more time, swallowing the words, holding on to this life for however long I could. But she was right. The secret had grown too heavy, and I was so very tired of carrying it alone. "Tell me what you want," I said. "Speak." The word was simple, but weighted with finality. "Tell me what really happened that night. Say all the things you've held back. Let the silence break, and let us both be free." So I told her. I told her everything. How old Dai and I had been caught in the storm, how we'd found the shrine, how I'd woken to find him dead, frozen, and how she had appeared, beautiful and terrible, winter given form. I told her about the bargain, the promise of silence, the mark she'd left in my chest that I'd carried every day for 17 years. I told her about the years after, the loneliness, the weight of the lie, how I'd recognized her the moment she came to the village, but convinced myself I was paranoid because the alternative was impossible. How I'd loved her anyway. How I'd let myself believe we could have this life, knowing somewhere deep down that it was borrowed time, that winter always reclaims what belongs to it. As I spoke, the frost spread further, the fire died completely, my breath froze and fell in tiny bells that shattered on the icy floor, and Yuki-onna, not Yuki, not my wife, but the spirit of winter herself, stood in the center of our small house, crying tears that froze and shattered before they could fall. When I finished, the silence was absolute. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed." "You were exactly what I needed," I said, and I was crying too, warm human tears that felt scalding on my frozen face. "For 6 years you were everything." She crossed the distance between us and kissed me one last time. Her lips were cold as mountain water, cold as starlight, cold as winter dawn. But I kissed her back and tasted salt and snow and all the seasons we'd never share. When she pulled away, she was already fading, her form becoming translucent, dissolving into the cold air like morning mist. "Will I see you again?" I asked, though I knew the answer.
Perhaps her voice was fading, becoming wind. On very cold nights when the snow falls heavy and the world is quiet, you might feel me pass by, feel that cold in your chest wake for a moment. She was barely visible now, just a shimmer, a feeling more than a form. I won't be able to come close. The bargain is broken, but I'll remember you, Takeshi. I'll remember this. These 6 years, they were the only warmth I've ever known. Yuki, go to the fire, she said, her voice everywhere and nowhere. Build it up, make it warm. Live your life, Takeshi. Grow old, and when the winter finally comes for you, for real this time, I'll be waiting, I promise. I'll make sure you're not afraid. Then she was gone. The temperature returned to normal. The frost on the walls began to melt, water dripping to pool on the floor. The fire flickered back to life as if it had never died. I was alone in the house that had been ours. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. Then I did what she told me. I built up the fire. I made the room warm, and I lived.
That was 23 years ago, friend. I'm 61 now. My hair has gone white, not gray, but pure white, the color of fresh snow. My hands are gnarled from a lifetime of work. My chest aches on cold mornings, and the healer tells me to rest, but we both know what's happening. I'm like a tree that's weathered too many harsh seasons, still standing, but brittle, ready to fall. The house is quieter than ever. My sister died 5 years back. Her children visit sometimes, bring me food, worry that I'm alone. But I'm not lonely. I've made my peace with solitude, learned to find company in the wind, in the falling snow, in my own thoughts. The village still tells stories of Yuki-onna. The tales have changed over the years, the way stories do. Some say she steals children. Others say she guides lost travelers to safety. A few old women claim she fell in love with a woodcutter once, gave up her power to be with him, became human, and died in his arms. I never correct them. Stories are like snow. They drift and change shape, and no two people see them quite the same way. But sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the snow falls so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face, I feel her. The cold spot in my chest wakes, pulses once or twice, and I know she's near. Not in the house, she wouldn't intrude, but close, walking past on the road outside, standing in the forest, watching from the mountain pass. I never go to the window to look. I never call out. Some things are better left to the edges of sight, the corners of awareness. I did what she asked. I lived. I worked. I grew old. I never remarried. How could I? How do you explain that your heart is still half frozen, still belonging to a woman made of winter who walked away into a storm 23 years ago? You don't. You just smile and say you're content alone, and eventually people stop asking. I'm telling you this now because you're here, and the night is long, and stories need to be shared. And because I'm old enough that the truth doesn't frighten me anymore. What can she do to me now? I've lived the life she gave me. I've honored her gift. And maybe because I can feel my own winter coming. My breath is shorter than it used to be. My chest aches. The healer gives me herbs and kind lies, but I know I'm like those trees old Dai used to point out, the dead ones still standing, waiting for the wind to finally knock them down. I'm not afraid. She promised, you see. That last night, as she was leaving, she promised she'd be there when my time came.
She'd make sure I wasn't afraid. I believe her. The fire is getting low. I should add more wood, but I find I'm tired tonight. Tired in a way that sleep won't fix. Can you feel it? The temperature dropping, the air getting heavier. The snow outside is falling faster now, thicker. The wind is rising to a familiar howl. It might just be a storm. The mountains are full of them. Or it might be something more. You should go, friend, while the path is still visible. Take the lantern from the hook by the door. You'll need it. The village isn't far. If you hurry, you'll make it before the storm gets worse. Don't worry about me. I'm an old man in my own house by my own fire. I have everything I need. And if you hear something as you walk, footsteps in the snow behind you, or a voice calling your name, don't turn around, don't answer. Just keep walking, keep your eyes forward, and let the winter pass you by. Some things are best left unseen. Some promises are best kept, and some loves last longer than a lifetime, colder than death, quieter than snow falling on snow falling on snow. I can feel her now. The cold spot in my chest is spreading, slow and gentle, like ice forming on a still pond. There's no pain, just a gradual cooling, a settling, a sense of coming home after a long journey.
The fire is very low now. The shadows are very deep. And there, at the edge of the darkness, where the firelight can't quite reach, there she is. Still beautiful, still terrible, still mine. "Hello, Takeshi," she says, and her voice is exactly as I remember, soft as falling snow. "Hello, Yuki," I say, and I'm smiling. I can feel it, the warmth of joy even as the cold spreads through my limbs. "Are you ready?" I am. She holds out her hand. I can see through it to the darkness beyond, see the snow swirling in patterns that might be letters, might be farewells, might be nothing at all. I take her hand. Her touch is cold, so cold, but I don't mind. I've been waiting for this cold for 23 years. This is just the cold coming home. "Will it hurt?" I ask, because even now, at the end, I'm still a little afraid. "No," she promises. "Remember, I'll make sure you're not afraid." And she's right. The fear is leaving, draining away like water. In its place is peace, relief, the feeling you get when you finally set down a heavy burden you've carried too long. The room is growing dimmer, or maybe my eyes are getting heavy. The fire is barely aglow. But I can see her clearly, more clearly than anything else. Her dark eyes, her pale skin, her sad, gentle smile. "I missed you," I say. "I know, I missed you too. Every winter, every snow, I'd pass by and feel you inside, warm and alive, and I wanted to knock on the door, but I couldn't. You had to live. You had to grow old." I did. Was it enough? "It was everything," she says, and pulls me close into an embrace like being wrapped in winter wind, in falling snow, in all the cold, clean nights I've ever known. I rest my head on her shoulder. I can feel my heartbeat slowing, the cold spreading to my fingers, my toes, my lips. It doesn't hurt. She was right about that. "Where are we going?" I whisper. "North, into the deep mountains where the snow never melts and the stars are so bright they sing. You'll like it there. It's quiet, peaceful." "Will I become like you?" "No, you'll be you. Just different, cold where you were warm,
still where you were moving, but still you. I'll make sure of that. The room is growing very dark now. I can't feel the chair beneath me, can't feel anything except the cold and her arms and a distant sound that might be wind, might be singing, might be the mountain itself breathing. Somewhere far away, I hear a door close, footsteps in snow, the soft sound of something settling, and then nothing but white, nothing but silence, nothing but snow, falling and falling and falling, until there's no difference between sky and ground, between breath and air, between one moment and the next. I am cold, I am still, I am content, and I am not afraid, not at all, because she's here, holding my hand, leading me forward into the white and the quiet and the endless gentle winter. And I am finally home.
In the morning, the village finds him, an old man in his chair, eyes closed, a slight smile on his face, frost on his eyelashes like tears of ice. They say he died peacefully in his sleep. They say it was a good death for a good man. They bury him next to his mother and his sister, and they tell stories about the quiet woodcutter who never remarried, who kept to himself, who always seemed to be waiting for something. And on snowy nights, when the wind is high and the world is white, travelers on the mountain road sometimes see two figures walking together in the storm. One tall and dark-haired, one shorter and bent with age, but straightening as they walk, growing younger with each step. They walk north into the deep mountains, and they never look back. And the snow falls behind them, erasing their footprints, keeping their secret safe forever.